Usual situation, a hydrochloric acid spill right outside of a water treatment supplier near 108th and J in Omaha. It forced people and other businesses to evacuate and take shelter.
As 6 News' Johan Marin reports, Omaha Fire Department neutralized the leak just in time.
About 300 gallons of hydrochloric acid spilled onto the street from what Omaha Fire Captain Brian Thorson believes was a storage container.
So our crews arrived on scene. They initially just started damming up the area and kind of putting some soda ash down to help neutralize it. The leak is no longer active. It stopped. We've asked the businesses to the south to shelter in place.
One of those businesses nearby is First Detail Supply. Manager Mark Flores told us he was outside at the time and saw a crowd of firefighters arrive to the scene.
I walked a little bit down there towards the building, and that's when they were just saying the hydrochloric acid spill.
Flores and other businesses were advised not to get near the scene. At first, he was worried about the situation. Even though it didn't affect his business, his concern was the environment. But Thorson says they're controlling the situation.
Hazmat rigs arrive on scene, and they kind of have some special equipment to be able to monitor the air quality, as well as the extra soda ash to be able to neutralize the agent.
And the waste that's left will be disposed in a safe and environmental way. On your side, Johan Marin, 6 News.